Quran translates from Arabic as the recitation. The words are intended to be spoken aloud. But the Quran is also a book immersed in mystery. Its verses, considered to be some of the most beautiful Arabic ever written, are a labyrinth of language, more poetry than prose. And its layout defies easy understanding. Unlike the Bible, the Quran doesn't follow a chronological narrative. Its 114 chapters, or surahs, are organized mostly according to length, with the longest at the beginning and the shortest at the end. Some converts to the Quran were entranced by the sheer beauty of the language of the work itself, which they saw as so perfect it had to be the work of God.
When Muslims are asked, well, all right, what proof have you got that this is a divine revelation? Muslims will answer, and they have answered this over 1,000 years, the proof is the Quran itself. That is the miracle, that an illiterate man in the middle of nowhere suddenly produces this magnificent, powerful document.
As I was being raised as a Muslim, I was kind of a skeptic myself. And I heard over and over again that the Quran is an incredible language, unsurpassed language. It's the marvel of literature. I just became curious. I started reading the Quran for myself. And I found actually that it was confusing literature. It was moving from subject to subject, tenses were changing, context was changing, surahs were changing in their historical context. There was a lot of shift. And I didn't understand, because coming from a Western point of view, you have a certain view of how you critique literature, right? Now, when I got into Arabic studies, and I started diving into this question of what makes the Quran miraculous, I started discovering things that literally they overpowered me. And I'm still a student of them. I actually teach a seminar that's traveling the country called Divine Speech. And the entire intent of the seminar is to expose the literary marvel of the Quran to an English-speaking audience without resorting to Arabic. That's the seminar. Just as an example, one phrase in the Quran that's part of a large discussion is the phrase وَرَبَّكَ فَكَبِّرْ. In Arabic it says وَرَبَّكَ فَكَبِّرْ, which means, and declare the greatness only of your Lord. Now recall I said something about a fusion of style and content. The content is beautiful. What's interesting is the phrase وَرَبَّكَ فَكَبِّرْ is a palindrome. In other words, it spells backwards and forwards the same word. So the Quran is declaring the greatness of the Lord in a way, in its spelling form, and there's multiple instances in the spoken Quran, that it's actually a linguistic palindrome. Now, when you want to generate a palindrome in English, like race car, or Bob, or dad, or something like that, small one-syllable ones are easy to generate. Maybe a big word is a little harder, but a sentence, it would take you some time to sit down with words that are spelled backwards and forwards and come up with something that, and then even if you do that, your concern isn't your content. What's your concern? The spelling. And this is not one, these are multiple instances in the Quran, and this is one area of the many areas of the linguistic marvel of the Quran.
This belief in an eternal, unchanging universe, for centuries a pillar of Western cosmology, was unexpectedly challenged in 1915 by Albert Einstein's general theory of relativity. Einstein's equations implied a startling possibility. The cosmos was not static, but instead existed in a continual state of either contraction or expansion.
Einstein did not like the idea that the universe was dynamic at all. In fact, like almost all scientists at the time, in the early 20th century, he assumed the universe was static and eternal. What's interesting and ironic is that he thought he had made some kind of mistake in his equations for the general theory of relativity. But a few years after he developed the theory, a Belgian astronomer named Lemaitre developed a model based upon his equations, which again predicted that the universe was in a continual state of expansion.
In 1929, theoretical predictions were confirmed with empirical data. At the Mount Wilson Observatory overlooking Los Angeles, astronomer Edwin Hubble studied light from distant galaxies. Hubble determined that galaxies beyond our Milky Way were moving away from us at a speed proportional to their distance from the Earth. The more distant the galaxy, the faster it is receding. Hubble's landmark discovery led most astronomers and physicists, including Albert Einstein, to a similar conclusion. If the universe is continually expanding, then at earlier points in its history, it must have been smaller and denser.
As the projector runs forward, we watch the universe as it continually expands. But if the projector were to be stopped and were switched into reverse to make the movie run backward, then instead of watching the galaxies move farther and farther apart from each other, we'd see them draw closer and closer together.
As you trace this expansion back in time, the universe grows denser and denser and denser until finally the entire known universe is contracted down to a state of infinite density, which marked the beginning of the universe.
And indicates its expansion from a sudden, perhaps violent moment in time.
This literally represents the origin of the universe from nothing. So the startling implication of Hubble's discovery was the temporal finitude of the universe, that the universe had an absolute beginning at some point in the finite past.
This belief isn't based on some theological doctrine. It's based on scientific evidence.
1,000.
Muhammad could not have known these facts about human development in the 7th century because most of them were not discovered until the 20th century. This is a leech, and this is the human embryo, but 23 days. I think you have to agree that the similarity between these structures is amazing.
The key word in both is al-Ghaib. At this stage is known to no one except Allah.
The rapid growth and dramatic changes which occur after the bones have been clothed by muscles have been mentioned in the Holy Quran 1400 years ago.
Surah 79, Ayah 32 states, also in the context of creation, and the mountains hath he firmly fixed. Similar mention of mountains is found in several other surahs. It is permissible to interpret this to imply that mountains are rooted and that modern geophysics has established deep crustal roots for the axial parts of mountain systems at converging plate boundaries. We need research into the history of early Middle Eastern oral traditions to know whether, in fact, such historical events have been reported. If there is no such record, it strengthens the belief that God transmitted through Muhammad bits of his knowledge that we have only discovered for ourselves in recent times.
"400 years ago, when the world was immersed in darkness, the Quran was revealed, which brought light to a beleaguered world. And whereas the earlier books came with many scientific mistakes, due to the hand of man having delved into them, the Quran had none of these contradictions. The world thought there could be no reconciliation between religion and science. But the Quran mentioned many scientific facts in great detail,